In 1998, John Gotti Jr. was indicted by a grand jury and arrested by FBI agents on federal racketeering charges stemming from his role as the acting head of the Gambino crime family. After a series of negotiations with the federal government and 9 months in jail, Gotti Jr. decided he wanted to enter a guilty plea, serve his time, and retire from a life in organized crime. But to do so, he felt like he needed the blessing of his dying father, John Gotti Sr., who was serving a life sentence for murder. He asked for and received permission from a federal judge to travel to the U.S. Medical Center for Federal Prisoners in Springfield, Missouri, for a face-to-face meeting with his ailing father. It was taped by prison officials and would be the last time the two would ever see each other.
The story will continue in a moment.
The extraordinary meeting took place in a prison conference room with the father, badly disfigured by surgery for throat, neck, and mouth cancer, sitting directly across the table from his son, who wanted to turn his back on a life his father had pulled him into.
My father starts off by saying that I received the message that John wants closure. And I looked at my father, and again, we're being monitored, so we have to be very careful how we communicate.
He says the agenda had been discussed with his father in advance by family attorney Joe Carrazzo, and that closure meant not just pleading guilty, but quitting the mob. The Don responded by making fun of the word.
So Joseph told me, John wants closure. I said, Joseph, that's not that word ain't in my son's vocabulary. That's overeducated, unintelligent motherfucker. That way, closure. It's a new 90s word. I don't like it.
For Gotti Sr., the idea of giving in went against everything he believed in.
He's, fight, fight, fight. And if you accuse me of robbing the church and the steeple sticking out of my backside, I'm going to deny it. And I can't reach him. And not only that, the closure, he talked me out of the plea.
So I know your feelings, Dad. I'm falling off a cliff. I'm falling off a cliff.
John Jr. left the prison and returned to New York, where he told his attorney to begin preparing a defense.
And then last minute, the day we were picking the jury, I sat there. I left the house that morning, was getting ready for trial. And I saw my wife, and I saw my kids, and I saw my whole family, and I says, I got to try to end this here. I got to try to end this. I went and spoke to my lawyers, and I says, get me the plea. Get me the plea, I'll take the plea.
What did you plead guilty to?
Racketeering.
Specifically?
I believe it was extortion in the construction industry, gambling, taxes, loan sharking.
All things you did?
Things I did do, yes, correct. I was a loan shark. The fact that most of my customers joined WITSEC pretty much bankrupted me in the loan sharking business.
Joined what?
The Witness Protection Program.
Oh, right.
Yeah. They chased me out of that industry, but quick.
Gotti took the plea, believing the government would leave him alone once he'd paid his debt to society, and that he'd be able to quit the Gambino family and get on with his life. Well, first of all, did you think you could get out? Do you think people would let you out?
Sure, why not? Sure, why couldn't I?
Well, because there's this old saw. I mean, it was part of one of your trials that you can't get out of the mob. You can't get out of the life.
Who said?
All the movies. It's all the lore.
There you go. The movies, it makes great reading.
The federal government.
And what makes them an authority on this? The federal government should have embraced my message that you can. You can move on with your life. You can change. Instead, they says, no, that's not possible. Everybody in the streets let me move on with my life. It's the government that didn't let me move on with my life. They says you can't. The guys in the street says, good riddance. Take care. Have a good time. It's just that it irritated, I guess, someone in law enforcement.
Why do you think it irritated somebody in law enforcement?
Because I guess they want you to feel the only options that you have, okay, is death, jail, or cooperate. Now, you want to get out of that life, we arrest you. You either can kill yourself, go to jail, or we'll embrace you with open arms. Gotti was serving his 6.5-year sentence at the Raybrook prison in upstate New York
much of it in solitary confinement, when his father died. When he had the opportunity to make phone calls, they went to his wife and children in Long Island, and not his Gambino family. He even arranged for regular parent-teacher conferences with his son's school.
I made them in chains, dragged me out of my cell every Friday, and they put me in a room, belly chained and handcuffed, and I had a conference, a parent-teacher conference, every Friday at 2 o'clock at my son Frankie's school, every Friday. And it's the only time they ever heard me. If they forgot to come get me for that call, it's the only time I bucked. I would buck in jail when they did that. Otherwise, I was a model inmate. And basically what happened was they'd put me on speakerphone and I'd be in a room with all the teachers. My son's teachers would be there and his guidance counselors and whatnot, and we'd play out the whole week.
But his deal with the federal government didn't work out the way he had intended.
You thought you were a free man when you got out?
Absolutely.
But it didn't turn out that way?
No, it didn't turn out that way. It was several weeks before I was supposed to get released, and they indicted me again. I was angry at my lawyers. I was angry at the government. I was angry at everybody. I thought that I got bamboozled. That's what I thought, hoodwinked.
The new racketeering charges allege that John Jr. had ordered an attack 12 years earlier on Curtis Sliwa, a talk show host and anti-crime crusader who had railed against his father. Sliwa was shot in a New York taxicab and seriously wounded, but survived. Gotti denied any involvement. The case was tried 3 times, each one ending in a mistrial with a jury deadlocked.
After I wasn't convicted, that's where it should have ended. Then it just kept on. So now everybody was just putting a target on my back and everybody was gunning for me. It didn't matter how it was going to happen, but it had to happen.
In 2009, he was indicted again, this time for allegedly participating in or authorizing 3 murders, all committed before 1992. Gotti was held in jail for 16 months without bail, awaiting trial on a case that was based almost exclusively on the word of former mafia associates who received sentence reductions or favorable considerations in exchange for their testimony.
The fact that these witnesses, I mean, there's not even a credit check there. All you have to do is slaughter people. And if the trophy you have that you're waving is bigger than themselves, then it's okay. That's a problem. I think that's a problem.
Charles Carnesi is Gotti's attorney.
Was there any other evidence other than the testimony of these informers that...
Not a single piece of evidence. No eyewitness testimony, no forensic evidence, nothing whatsoever.
Gotti says the chief prosecution witness, John Alight, was a drug dealer and a confessed killer who testified that he had murdered 3 people on orders from Gotti.
There was a confrontation in the courtroom.
Right.
With Mr. Alight.
Yeah, after he testified, he got off the stand and he walked towards me and he smiled, he was laughing. And that's when I called him a punk and a dog. He always was a punk and a dog. He was a junkie. He was all of those things. A miscreant. He was ostracized and chased out of that neighborhood. He wasn't asked to leave, he was chased out of that neighborhood. He was a trash pail then, he's a trash pail now, he'll always be a trash pail.
Thank you.
That trial also ended with a hopelessly deadlocked jury. When we come back, Gotti goes home and tries to move on with his life.